purpose of this tape is to provide background information for a story on the life of Isaac and Leah Bailey Dunford that will be prepared by someone for their posterity. We're here on a road in Salisbury Plain approaching Trowbridge in Wiltshire, the birthplace of Isaac and Leah. Salisbury Plain is not far and actually contains the site of Stonehenge, so it's been inhabited for centuries. Trowbridge was first mentioned as a Saxon village in the Domesday Book. At that time, the settlement would have consisted of a 10th century stone church, a stone mill, a collection of round and long thatched houses. Earlier settlement is indicated from occasional finds, including a Bronze Age arrowhead and an Iron Age and Roman pottery. I'm going to speed this up, the tape up, because it bounces a little bit and we've got a lot of territory to cover. Roman settlements have been identified at Hilperton and Wingfield, and at this slight Combrash Ridge running through Trowbridge is also likely to have been cultivated. After the Norman conquest, a change of ownership of the manor resulted in the de Bohun family building a castle in the 12th century which became the headquarters of their estates. Urban development under the lords of the manor followed with the establishment of markets and a fair. In the late 14th century began the cloth industry, which was to provide the chief source of wealth for more than 5 centuries. In the 15th century, this wealth helped to rebuild the church after a depression in the 16th century. The extensive manufacture of medley cloths brought great industrial prosperity and importance. This prosperity is reflected in the Georgian houses, which are still such a feature of the town. In fact, many of the buildings we look at are associated with the woolen industry. We're still not at Trowbridge yet, but this shows the countryside surrounding the area in Salisbury Plain. We'll soon see Longleat Castle, which was started much after the foundation of Trowbridge. There it is in the background. And as ever doing this tape, feel free to take out and edit and change. And, this is just fodder for whatever you'd like to do. And here's Longleat Castle. We leave the area and drive along country roads towards Frome, pronounced or spelled Frome, F-R-O-M-E. It's actually Frome. And then on to Trowbridge itself. Trowbridge means tree bridge or wooden bridge, which probably was built across the river there nearby. The town grew with industrial mechanization and steam power in the early 1800s to become the largest in Wiltshire and the most heavily industrialized in the south of England. A future as an industrial town ended in the mid-19th century when the west of England woolen industry went into its final decline. The last woolen mill, home mills, finally ceased weaving in 1982. Other industries are now well established, including Usher's Brewery, which which we'll see in some old pictures there in the center of Trowbridge. Bowers, Unigate, Airsprung, Redwood Burn, and several light engineering firms. We're entering from here, or from. I'm Rob Dunford. This video begins in June 1991 when the Family Association asked me to continue the quest for information on Isaac and Leah Bailey Dunford and their family's background. We're here in Wiltshire, England, to extend our Dunford family lines and to find additional persons whose names may have been missed from our records. I'd like to talk briefly about what has been done already, where we stand, and what yet needs to be completed in our Dunford family history. What have we done already? Well, over the past 5 to 10 years, we've been gathering information together. We've contacted relatives. We've visited family history libraries. We've conducted research on earlier trips in Wiltshire, at London, the Record Office. This is my 4th trip to England, and all of this has been done with the objective of gathering together the best information that exists on our Dunford lines and putting it together in a database that all can use. Well, where do we stand? We have 1,100 names of Dunfords and Felts and Bittners that have been gathered together and are resident in our databases. The Dunford lineage has been extended backwards from Isaac Dunford, who was the first of our relatives to come over to America, back 4 generations to John Dunford in Frome, Somerset County in the 1670s. And I'll be showing you Frome in just a little while. We have the Flower lineage back even further to Trowbridge in the 1620s, and I'll be showing you Trowbridge. Finally, what do we need to do yet, specifically? Well, first of all, we need to verify that indeed the work that has been done already is correct. Secondly, we need to fill in the missing names that exist. Surely John Dunford and Mary Flower had more than one child. John Dunford and Mary Blair and their son Isaac had an average of 12 children each. Wouldn't you think that John Dunford and Mary Flower had more than one? In the 1851 census, there is shown a Hannah in the household of Isaac Dunford, but she is not shown in family group records. Is that a mistake? Is she a missing daughter? If so, where is she? In other words, where is her name? We need to extend our lines further. It would be nice, but not a requirement, to find the actual homes where they lived and the churches where they worshipped. Isaac's brother George was born in Holbrook House near Trowbridge, as we learn from his records. Was Isaac also born there? And if so, is the home still standing? It would be nice to see it, don't you think? We know that Isaac was born in July of 1848 and ordained an elder under the hands of his brother George, who was president of the Steeple Ashton branch. Well, Isaac was also called as president of the Steeple Ashton branch in January of 1853. Is the meeting house still there? What does it look like? Although all of the Trowbridge Dunfords married in St. James, the parish church, as all were required to do by law to be married in a parish church recognized by the government, Church of England Church. Not all persons were members of that church. We know that George said that his mother met in a beautiful little church. Well, St. James, the parish church, as I'll show you in a while, is certainly not small, not little. Where did George and probably Isaac attend with their mother? And what religion were they before they joined the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? We hope to find the answers to these and other questions during the next little while. Well, here we are at the Wiltshire Family History Library, and I've just gotten registered, as have these other people here, and let's let's go in and see what they have available. Now it turns out that Lily Dunford Meekham, the foremost Dunford family genealogist, devoted years of her life to researching family history. She didn't have access to the tremendous electronic resources that we have available to us today in family search and other electronic and computer-based resources. But her work forms the foundation of all of the Dunford family history, the genealogical data that we enjoy today. She corresponded with LDS and other sources on the other side of the ocean in England, and much of what she has done, most of what she did, was entirely correct. Only in recent months have we found information that is clarifies information that was found to be incorrect, but very little of her work needed correcting. There's a tremendous interest in family history in the British Isles, as there is here today, and this is an open day for the Wiltshire Family History Center. We're approaching the nonconformist files here because our people were not really members of the Church of England at the time. They were Baptists or nonconformists. When I began researching the nonconformist files on Baptist and other non-Church of England churches, I found that there was actually better information in Lily Dunford Meekham's files and in the LDS Church files than on site. In fact, when I was in the Wiltshire County Records Office, I asked the leading family historian there if there were any better data and better indexed and better organized than it was here. And he told me, he said, do you know what? He said, there's actually better information, more complete and better indexed in Salt Lake City in the Mormon Church archives. This is footage that the editor of the writer for the upcoming movie may find useful. That man there is one of the foremost historians of the area and author of the book on Steeple Ashton by the name of Kenneth Rogers. Here you see boxes and boxes of information. These are information that is taken by hand from the tombstones of the area. These Dunfords here, many of them are very recent, as you can tell, and very little of it is computerized, as we have access to in the United States. Again, use or delete this information as necessary. The record shows that Isaac Dunford was president of the branch in Steeple Ashton. Steeple Ashton is a town just outside of Trowbridge that at the time was actually larger, more important than Trowbridge itself. There were more members in Trowbridge, in Steeple Ashton rather, so they all traveled down a road like this to Steeple Ashton, which is really an ancient town. We're in Steeple Ashton. This is a town that is really quite old. We learned that it was organized in 964 and has continued to operate since then, and originally was quite a large area covering several different towns. The prefix of Steeple Ashton comes from the steeple of the church, and we'll see that in just a moment, but the steeple was built in about 1268, so it's been around here for quite a little while. This is where our great-great-great-grandfather Isaac Dunford and his brother George came to church with about 100 other members, and where they presided, and we'll see that hopefully in just a little minute. But we're going to take a tour of the area here, and you hear right from this is the post office, which is the central area of town, and we're just going to take a little tour here. Here we get our first shot of St. Mary's Chapel. I feel to leave out an in-depth history of the church at Steeple Ashton. Suffice it to say that it was called the Church of St. Mary the Virgin. It was started in the early to middle 1200s, and but the current portion you see here was built in about 1540. The name of the town comes from the very high height of the tower, and it was about 30 yards from the top of the tower to the top of the steeple. And the part that you saw there, and that we'll see in just a minute, is about 186 feet, and it was knocked down. There was a part on the left part here was about 186 feet, and then another 190 feet higher was the steeple itself. So it was a very prominent building in the area and could have been seen for miles around. But it was destroyed by lightning on 2 occasions in the 1600s, 1670. And they felt that it was the providence of Almighty God that He didn't want it built. So we'll leave off an in-depth discussion of this church, and as often happens in the early days of the LDS Church, the leaders and members of the most prominent churches were prominent in persecuting the members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So we will pass on this. This is actually two timber-framed cottages, perhaps of the late 16th or early 17th century. The brick infilling, however, as most houses of this construction in the village, was originally of wattle and daub construction, and also must have had thatched roofs. It is worth pointing out that the houses so far mentioned, and in fact all the old houses in the village, were built for homes of people of prosperity, and not for the working class. Not for the working class people. And Latter-day Saints were usually the working class. In fact, about a third of the membership of the church were on the welfare rolls at this time in the church's history. This home here is called Church Street House, and was here when Isaac and George were here, and because the house is dated 1815. This is the village green, which was once the marketplace of the medieval town. and on it stand two symbols of its former dignity. The market cross, which is behind this round thing, and the round thing is the lockup, or sometimes called the blind house. Anyway, that's where they locked people up. It had no windows. And the market cross was the center of the market. And again, we're not doing any editing here, so again, you can choose what you like. I like it. The cross dates from 1649 and has 4 sundials on it. Now, I have a fair amount of written history that you can call on me for. I have it in a book on Steeple Ashton and the Wiltshire Family History Society. We're now approaching Dark Lane, where Old Chessel's, or the house on God's Corner, was located. Called it God's Corner because of all the Mormons that met there. This is the lockup. And the market cross. Then we take a little walk to up Dark Lane North. Vicarage Lane. And this is the street that our brethren would have walked down. Yeah. This is the lane leading up to Old Chessel's, where the saints used to meet on what was called God's Corner at that time, because of all the Mormons that frequented the place. This is the path which they would have walked down. To Old Chessel's. And here it is. This is Old Chessel's on God's Corner, as it was called. Let this run for a little bit. I've provided the sound also so that you can use that for sweetening the background. In a moment, the owner will come out and want to know what I'm doing. He finds out and he very graciously invites us inside. I mentioned, see the pheasant on the roof? It's a fake one. This is only one of 2 thatched roof houses that are left in Steeple Ashton. Well, let's go and see if we can meet these people. Here we are in front of the house that Isaac and George and other Dunfords and other Latter-day Saints joined. It belongs to Samuel Mulholland and his wife, and she has lived here for about 60 years, and he's in the Navy, and they've just finished the upper portion of the house, the ridge, and I believe I showed you the pheasant up there, which of course is not real, but it's a lovely place, and I think we'll be meeting Mrs. Mulholland in just a moment. Well, we're pleased to be here, and Mrs. Mulholland, whom I've just met, has invited us in the home, and so invited me in the home, rather. So we're going to take a little walk, and come around back, and I want you to notice the lovely yard here in the back. And this is the home. We go in the back way here. This is a meeting room, and we're walking into the parlor of the home. Well, this is awfully kind of you to let me do this recording. Well, we're here in the parlor of Steeple Ashton's house called Old Chessel's, where the early saints used to meet, and I'm going to read a little history in just a minute of what they may have done. I'm reading from a book called Down Barrett Lane, Volume 1, Steeple Ashton Barretts, B-E-R-R-E-T-T-S, 1604 to 1978, by Lamar C. Barrett. It's published in Provo, Utah, Orem, Utah, by the John Watts Family Genealogical Organization, publisher, 1032 East, 400 South, Orem, Utah, USA 84057, printed by Community Press, Provo, Utah. It turns out that this book was published in 1980 by the John Watts Barrett Family Genealogical Organization. And I think I'm going to come in and sit down and read these things. And I'm reading from this book. And George Dunford was the first president of the branch. He was baptized in 31 November 1847 by John Halliday. And he emigrated to the States in 1953, or 1853. And when George Dunford arrived in Salt Lake City, he wasn't satisfied with the Mormons there, and apparently he didn't get the respect he felt he deserved. He had been honored as the first branch president here in Steeple Ashton. And he said that in a letter to Mrs. James that he could get nothing to eat in Salt Lake City but bread and potatoes, and that a man was thought nothing of unless he had 2 or 3 wives. There was quite a bit of prejudice against the church here, and but I'd like to tell you a little bit about the history of the branch. Although the Trowbridge branch, and this is from page 189, although the Trowbridge branch of the church started out being larger than the Steeple Ashton branch, it did not remain so. The Trowbridge branch had 26 members in 1856. At times, the saints in Trowbridge were considered a part of the Steeple Ashton branch, which at times was the largest branch in the Trowbridge area, with as high as about 60 members from Steeple Ashton village and up to about 80 members from 14 neighboring villages at any one time. At a session of the South Conference held at Bristol, 6 December 1851, the Steeple Ashton branch was represented as containing 52 members, including 2 elders, 4 priests, 4 teachers, 2 deacons. Over a period of 30 years, 1844 to 1874, the Steeple Ashton branch had membership of 121 people from Steeple Ashton village and 93 from the 14 neighboring villages. The grand total for membership during the 30-year period was 214 known members. 91 of the 214 members, 63 from Steeple Ashton and 28 from neighboring 14 neighboring villages, eventually emigrated to America, and about 55 were excommunicated. Church records were not adequately kept during some periods of time, so the membership was undoubtedly higher than the 214 known figure. Branch meetings in the Mormon home, chapels like this one, were probably attended by an average of about 50 to 100 saints. This was a large number of Mormons for such a small village as Steeple Ashton. The census of 1841 indicated that there were 450 people living in Steeple Ashton. Allowing for a normal growth in such a little village, it is possible that the 121 baptized Mormons were approximately 20% of the total population of Steeple Ashton during the period 1850 to 1870. Some of the Mormon converts from Steeple Ashton came from the agricultural laboring class of people who were poor. 21 converts, including children, lived at one time or another in the poorhouses on Common Lane. Some of them received public relief through a committee set up for the purpose. John and Hannah Barrett, parents of John Watts Barrett, were among the group that lived on Common Lane and received welfare aid. Those on Common Lane represented 10% of the total Mormons. And I think what I'd like to do at this stage is give you the membership in Steeple Ashton in number of baptisms. In 1884 there were 5. In 1885 there were 4. 1846. It should have been 1844. 1845 there were 4. 1846, 0, 1847, 14, 1848, 10, 1849, 22, and then 3 or 5 or 6 for the next few years, for a total of 121 from Steeple Ashton. There were others, 93 from 14 villages, for a total of 214 baptisms from the years 1844 or so through the 1870s. One of the reasons that I leave this section here going is to see if you want to superimpose an image of an Isaac Dunford or somebody else there in that chair telling this story. The same is true of the gate leading up to the house. Notice that there's space to the right of that gate to superimpose a narrator or someone else, possibly impersonating Isaac Dunford or one of his descendants, to make this video a little more interesting. Miscellaneous diaries. So, in any case, the branch membership does not show anybody but a George Dunford in 15 December 1822, born and emigrating in 1853. So, in any case, that's the situation, and this is probably what it looked like at about the time. This is a picture of Stallard Street, where some Dunfords lived. There was a group, the group in the center, which was once a dye house, and when this picture was taken, it was warehouse and stables. It was bought by the board in 1889. This, of course, is of Trowbridge. And the source of this is Trowbridge in Pictures, 1812 to 1914. This is Shales Lane, as it was before the main Conager demolitions of the 1930s. On the right is the Harp Inn, and opposite to the covered cart is the entrance to what is now called the Riverway. This handloom, which was photographed entirely for its historical interest, was much like the one probably Isaac Dunford and his brothers worked at. Hi, I'm at the home of Merle Meekum Jorgensen, who is the daughter of Lily Dunford Meekum, who was the excellent Dunford genealogist, and I have her materials here, these and others that we'll be going through and recording here on the date shown in the video. And I hope this is effective in moving forward the publishing of this information. There are two main books, the direct line from Isaac on back and the allied lines of the Dunfords in that book, plus some other information that she has that we'll be going through in these and other books. This is the start. Isaac Dunford and Leah Bailey. And I have gone through and gathered all this information and entered it into the personal ancestral file database, which has been since circulated to the family and now holds over 6,400 names of ancestors and descendants. And of course, most of them are descendants. Much of the information now has been extended by a professional genealogist whose services have been paid for out of family funds contributed by members of the association. This is an early map of Trowbridge, Much of these photos I got in England.
And the town hall and market house in later times. The marketplace here continued in use until the latter half of the 19th century. The early stalls gradually became permanent buildings in the marketplace itself, and it became smaller. Until the 1780s, a market cross similar to the one that we just saw in Steeple Ashton, but of cruder design, stood near the Midland Bank. It was pulled down because it was said to have be of no further use, and the ball at the top can be seen in the parish church. This is the marketplace and town hall as seen today from a different view. These buildings were prominent, of course, in Isaac and Leah's time. This is the Parade, an area recognized as the best group of clothiers' houses in Wiltshire. They were built in the 1730s of painted stucco with stone tile roofs. This is the same area today. In the distance, not far from the center of the photo, you can see the steeple of St. James, the parish church. In the Parade was the headquarters of Usher's Brewery. This is how it looks today. It's under renovation, but much of the flavor still remains. By the riverside is the Blind House, which was built in 1757. It was the town's lockup or jail until 1854, when a police station opened across the street. Blind houses were a common feature of Wiltshire and the rest of England. They were called blind from their lack of windows. Prisoners included those awaiting trial at Salisbury and those who had just imbibed too freely at the local alehouses. The interior consists of 2 cells, popularly believed to be for separating men and women. Near the blind house were usually the stocks and a ducking stool. They appeared by 1850 and had not been used by many decades before that. Upstream from the blind house, we see the perforated brick of the Handle House. The Handle House sits on its stone bridge across the river. It was once a common feature of the west of England in the cloth industry. They were used as wind stoves for drying the handles of the teasels used in raising the nap on damp wool. This was built in 1844, about 9 years before Isaac and Leah left England, and is the last of the surviving handle houses in the country. The parish church of St. James was probably founded in the 13th century on the edge of Marketplace. This church, called the New Church, was built in the 14th century, at least the tower and the spire, and the 15th century, the portion seen here. There are Norman gravestones in the earlier building. The reason I show this is that this is where Isaac and Leah were married. It was restored in 1846 through 1848, right at the time that Isaac and Leah were there, and here it's being restored again in 1991. They were not members of this church, however. They were Baptists or nonconformists. John and Mary Blair, Isaac's parents, were members of the Baptist Church and were raised in that sect. This is the Emmanuel Baptist Church, where John and Mary Blair Dunford are buried. This is the restored marketplace walk, not far from the town hall, where Isaac and Leah probably passed many times on the way to the handle house to dry the wool that they were to use in weaving. Streets at the time were typically very narrow, with a gutter running down the center, not shown here. Now we get to the stars of this presentation finally. Isaac Dunford and his wife, Leah Bailey. These are probably the earliest photos that we have of them and are, in reality, no larger than about an inch high. This is a later but better reproduction, at least artistically, of Isaac and his wife Leah. This is Isaac and Leah's home as seen from the garden view. Probably this picture was taken when Leah and Alma visited there in 1887, nearly 40 years after leaving their homeland. That does indeed look like Alma in the top hat. Another view of Isaac and Leah's home, again probably taken on Leah's and Alma's return visit many years later. This is the scroll given to Isaac from the members of the Steeple Ashton branch, memorializing his service as branch president before he emigrated to the United States. This is a copy of the scroll given to Isaac Dunford when he was leaving as president of the Steeple Ashton branch, and it says, "We, the undersigned members of the Steeple Ashton branch of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, in the Wiltshire Conference, in consequence of the high esteem and respect which we have and do bear, and towards Elder Isaac Dunford, our dear beloved president, do hereby present him with this memorial, viz., or that is, and so forth." It's signed the 18th day of November, 1853. Signed by branch president and elders and so forth. In November 1853, Isaac and Leah left their beloved native land, including the 3 small graves of their daughters, and left with William and Alma, their 2 oldest sons. Although surely it was difficult for them to leave their native land, alienation from relatives, friends, and employers who were very critical of their new religion strengthened Isaac and Leah's desire to gather with the saints in Zion, and they continued their resolve to pursue a challenging journey. Isaac's father, John, had died earlier that year, and there was nothing to keep them from gathering with the saints in Zion. For 6 weeks they crossed the stormy Atlantic, finally landing at New Orleans and then made their way up the Mississippi River, where they located in St. Louis. Isaac labored in the mercantile business here and soon received his proof of his naturalization papers, shown here. This photograph, or actually charcoal, was presented at the 1996 reunion in Bloomington, and may be an even earlier photo than the ones shown earlier. The reason I say maybe an earlier reproduction is because this was also reproduced or produced at the reunion, yet she looks older than the ones shown a while ago. This is apparently a charcoal rendition. In 1864, Isaac and Leah moved from St. Louis to Salt Lake City for a final time. They'd been there once before. And then made plans at the request of Brigham Young to settle Bear Lake Valley. So they moved there in January 1865, actually February of 1865, and lived in this log house with 2 other families for a total of 16 people during the winter. This is Moroni standing by Isaac and Leah's first home in Bloomington before it was torn down in 1904. Although their early years in the valley were plagued by frosts and locusts, their hard work paid off, and soon they were harvesting successfully and selling their goods in Logan, a day or two journeys worth away. These are the Dunford boys in March of 1883. Standing behind are Oliver and James Lehigh, and in the front from left to right, Moroni, Albert, and Parley. Alma has already left, as has William. They're down in Salt Lake City at this time. This is the Dunford homestead, and family members taken in July of 1894. Standing in the back, going from left to right, again standing are Oliver and Parley here, and in front, Rao, Ida, Stanley, Mary J., Glenna, and Sarah on the far right. Then there's Moroni in the center and David Krogh on the right. To the right of Sarah, in front of Moroni, are Letha, Leah, and Mary. And on the rug are Bailey, Grover, Venice, and Logan. And then on the right side of the photo here shown are James standing with Eliza holding Karma, and then Florence to the right. These can be seen all together on page 28 of the Story of the Ancestors and Descendants of Isaac and Leah Bailey Dunford Book of Remembrance. This is a family dinner held in 1903 or 1904 when James was on his mission. This picture is shown on page 32 of the Green Book of Remembrance, but the names are not shown, and these are the names. Now, Eliza is at the head of the table with her eyes closed, but going from left to right are Nellie Mae Krogh, who's the baby, David A. Krogh, Lucille Krogh is on his lap, Parley Edwin Dunford, Christina Jacobson, Lavinia Jacobson on her lap, Moroni Dunford, Jefferson, Moroni's son, Rao, Oliver Dunford to the right of Letha is standing there. then Grant Dunford in front, Logan Dunford, Eliza holding Jenny, Venice, Verona, Karma, Don Albert, Daisy, Mary, Albert's wife, and then Mary Parley's wife. Blaine is on her lap, Sarah Dunford holding Lily, and then Lily Dunford Meekum, and then Nellie Jacobson. These are the children of Isaac and Leah Bailey Dunford, with the exception of Eliza. Standing at the back are Albert B., Parley Edward, James L., Moroni, and seated are in the far left corner William, then Oliver, Leah Dunford Krogh, and Alma Bailey. We'll be showing individual pictures of these great people in a moment. This is a family reunion at the home. Maybe you can pick out your ancestor. This is the Bloomington, Idaho LDS meeting house, built much later, no longer standing, and a 1935 reunion in front of Isaac and Leah Bailey Dunford's home. Perhaps you can spot your ancestor here. Can you see Apostle John A. Widtsoe there in the center? In the dark suit. This is Isaac and Leah Bailey's home as it appears today. Bloomington today still provides strong stock for the future. Its lovely fields and orchards brought to fruition by hard and relentless labor. Was sometimes given respite by a quick dip in the cold waters of the glacier-fed Bloomington Lake nearby. The very strong regret that I have that my progenitors did not leave a detailed account of their lives and labors while they were in mortality will no doubt be considered sufficient reason for the account which follows. Signed, James L. Dunford, who was Moroni's brother. Death of Isaac Dunford. In the fall of the year 1879, we had finished our threshing, and a great deal of our fall work. Father and mothers thought they would like to go to Salt Lake to see William and Alma and families and attend the October conference. So on Friday morning, 2nd of October, father, mother, sister Leah, and niece Leah, and myself went in a spring wagon we had borrowed from Brother Andrew Jacobson, drawn by Fan and Barney, a spirited team we then owned, for Salt Lake City, period. New paragraph, we camped for dinner just south of the bridge at Swan Creek. We had not proceeded far when a tire came off one of the hind wheels, Father and I walked back to Brother Cook's, who was then living at Swan Creek. We borrowed his wagon and drove back to the outfit, put the wheel on the wagon, and brought Mother and the two girls back to Cook's. Period. Here they stayed all night, and Father and I came to Bloomington with our wheel and had Brother Painter get busy and put the tire on the same evening, period. This was October 2nd, 1879. We got up early the next morning and set out for Swan Creek.
set out for Swan Creek. We found Mother and the girls anxiously awaiting us. We got our wheel put on Brother Cook's wagon returned, and dinner over, we were on our way again, period. We reached Meadowville that evening, and Brother Josiah Tuft made us very comfortable at his home, where any of our people were always welcome when we came that way. New paragraph. The morning of October 14th, 1879, was cloudy and rather downcast, period. We started on our journey through the mountains via the Danish Dugway, period. Brother and Sister Emmanuel Long were traveling with us, period. John W. and Levi H. were along with their parents, period. New paragraph. They were on their way to Ogden, where they owned an orchard, after a load of fruit, period. They were driving a span of mules, period. We camped for dinner somewhere in the Strawberry Canyon, period. We passed the Danish Dugway, Rock Creek, and on past Curtis's Ranch, Hardware Ranch, period. As we entered Blacksmith Fork Canyon, it was just getting dusk. Brother Long had difficulty in getting his mules to keep up with us, period. He had a small chain on the wagon, and he would hit them a lick with that, and they would pick up lively for a short way, then slack up again, period. Then he would rattle the said chain vigorously, and his team would speed up again for a short distance. The paragraph. About a mile from the head of the canyon, Father said to Brother Long, Brother Long, I will drive down to the meadows and get a fire started by the time you come, end quote. Brother Long said, quote, all right, end quote, semicolon. So we started down the canyon at a more rapid pace, period. New paragraph. We had 10 sacks of oats along, period. This just filled the bottom of the box, period. All the back half of the wagon was on top of the oats, and up to the cover was filled with wool, oats and wool Father was taking down to sell, period. The rest of our luggage, bedding, etc., and we folks occupied the front end of the box. Mother and Father were in the spring seat, and we children were behind the seat, period. As we started to travel up faster, Father was singing that splendid Mormon hymn, quote, all is well, end quote, period. That part of the poem, and should we die before our journey's through, happy day, all is well, end quote, are the last words I ever heard from Father's lips, for at this point I fell sound asleep, as did also the little girls, period. It was perhaps half an hour after that we were all three awakened by the shaking, bouncing, and rumbling of the wagon. I was the first to look up and discover that Father and Mother were gone from the wagon. Lines were dragging on the ground, and the team dashing like mad down the canyon. No paragraph. Shortly, Sister Leah got up on the side of the wagon box and jumped out among the boulders and willows on the banks of the angry, rushing river, Niece Leah was in the act, doing likewise, and I caught her and pulled her back, period. I thought we stood a better chance to remain in the wagon, period. Our team ran about a mile and a half around that big rock that projects out into the road so far that there is scarcely room for the wagon to pass between it and the raging river. Soon we reached an upgrade portion of the road, and rather sandy, period. This brought the team to us, B-R-O-T, to a lower gate, and a slower gate, and I jumped out and ran to the front and grabbed each horse by the bits and brought B-R-O-T, them to a standstill, period. As I did so, the tongue punched me quite hard in the abdomen, period. New paragraph. I soon hitched them and tied them to my wheel, period. Mind you, it was dark as pitch all the while. I caught hold of Niece Leah's hands and we started back on the run, not knowing what a fearful experience we would pass through. We soon met Sister Leah running like a mad person to overtake us. We joined hands and ran back as fast as breath would allow us, period. We would first come to one thing and then another, till finally, and then another, a frying pan, nose sacks, a sack of oats, etc., etc. Till finally, in the darkness, we could discern the form of our dear mother walking to and fro in the road, wringing her hands and sobbing bitterly, period. Finally, we could discern our dear Father's body lying flat on his back and with the left knee slightly raised, period. His hat was just a short distance from his head, period. He had his gloves on, the whip clenched in his right hand, period. The only movement I noticed was the right leg to straighten out just as we got to him, period. Blood was flowing from his mouth and nose and ears, period. We think he was killed instantly. His feet were in the direction of the wagon was going, and he was lying rather slanting across the wagon track, and apparently the wheel struck the neck first, bursting the jugular vein, and then passed diagonally. Bursting the jugular vein, and then passed diagonally over the chest and abdomen, and off at the hip, period. New paragraph. Imagine the distressing circumstances, dark as the darkest night, in a drizzling rain, and all out in the open, exclamation points, 2 of them. Imagine our dear mother's feelings, and intense anxiety, and fearful forebodings, all alone in that dark canyon, her dear husband lying in the rain, and that runaway team gone down the canyon with her 3 children in the wagon, she having no idea what would become of them, nor what she could do next, period. New paragraph. When we children got back to Mother, she sent Sister Leah and I back to meet Brother Long and family. We perhaps ran a mile or more before we met them, period. We told them the awful news, period. They took us in the wagon with them and hurried on down to the scene of great sorrow and lamentation, period. After some consultation was decided for John and Levi to go down and get our team, about a mile and a half away, and ride them back to Curtis's and get a man from there to bring a team and a light rig and come down the canyon to get Father's body, period. This Brother Curtis did come, assisted by another man. I don't think we'll need to read the rest of that. Just before we departed on this fateful trip, Father had preached at the funeral services of Matthew Thornock, and he made the expression during his remarks that, quote, no one knew whose turn it might be next, period. It might be you and it might be me, end quote. In just 1 week to the hour, our dear father was lying in the same place and services were being held for him, period. The day of the funeral was stormy and unpleasant, yet many came from nearby towns, and a splendid turnout from hometown, period. William Dunford was the second of Isaac and Leah Bailey's children. He was born January 17, 1847 in Trowbridge. When the family went to Bear Lake to settle that area from Salt Lake City, he stayed in Salt Lake probably to earn money for the family. He had probably training in art or photography because he worked for E.R. Savage, the photographer. William married Melvina Caroline Blanche Whitney, the daughter of Emmeline Wells and Newell K. Whitney, a former presiding bishop of the church, in October of 1867 in Salt Lake. Unfortunately, they divorced. William, the lower left here with Alma and Moroni, had beautiful penmanship, and most of what we know from him comes from approximately 80 letters he wrote to his parents. He would often give counsel to his parents and other family members in these letters, all with the intent of building them up and uplifting them. William's life was a hard one, as is evidenced in his letters. But the 3 children he had with Mellie, his wife, Daisy Dean, Verona May, and Leslie Alma, were joys in his life, and he doted on them continually. William passed away suddenly in October of 1891 at the age of 44 years. He was interred in the Salt Lake City Cemetery, but then was later moved to the Bloomington Cemetery, where he lies next to his sister Eliza. Alma Bailey Dunford was Isaac and Leah's 4th child. When he was 3 years old, the family left Trowbridge, where he was born, and sailed for America. He lived in winter quarters, and then left for Salt Lake City
in 1864 after living in St. Louis for about 8 years. At age 22, as he was traveling back and forth to St. George and Salt Lake City treating dental problems with the skills he had learned, he met and married Susan Young, daughter of Brigham and Lucy Bigelow Young. Susie, as he called her, wrote affectionate letters to his parents about her love for Alma. 2 children, Leah Eudora and Alma Bailey, were born in 1874 and 1875, respectively. Susie, or Sousa as she was later called in life, accomplished much in her 77 years, but her greatest and most fulfilling accomplishment was being a mother here of Leah. In 1877, Alma was surprised to be called on a mission to England for the LDS Church. Alma wrote his family regularly, telling them of the rigors of the mission and his love for his wife and children, until February 1878, when Isaac received this letter from Manchester, dated February 21st, telling him of Susan's desire to divorce Alma. After commenting about his recent transfer to the Manchester area, he expressed his distress with the poverty that the saints were suffering at the time, and then related the sad news from his wife. He writes, "Now comes the blow. She wanted a bill of divorce from me. Just think of that, Pa, and me on a mission and 7,000 miles away from home, and receive such news from the mother of my darling children, whom I love the best on earth, the wife next to my children. God bless them, how I love them all, and ever have done. Wifey gives no reason, only that she doesn't love me and consequently doesn't wish to live with me. She asked me to write and tell her where I would rather she should get the bill, from the church or the courts. This is the severe thing I never expected to hear of, but so be it." This was a devastating loss to Alma, and after counseling with the brethren serving there, he was advised to return to Salt Lake City. Possible reasons for the divorce are mentioned on page 90 in the Green Book, the Book of Remembrance, but suffice it to say they did divorce and both went on to create new marriages and families. After the divorce, Leah went to live with his parents, while Bailey here stayed with his mother. About 3 years later, in 1881, at age 31, he met and began to court Lavinia Tresilla Clayton, a daughter of William and Margaret Moon Clayton. They married in February of 1882 and moved into this home across from Pioneer Social Hall. Alma gave up his traveling dentistry and opened an office in Salt Lake City. His practice flourished, and he soon started work on a mansion out in the country. After giving birth to 5 children, Isaac Clayton, Carlos Leroy, Margaret Moon, Alice Amelia, and Rachel Grant, they moved into the new mansion south of town at 1675 South West Temple. Alma had built this house to astonish the leany-ups, as he called them, whoever they were. It was a lovely home, but through intrigue, Alma lost a lot of his money, and the home was never completely finished. Electricity never came out to that area, and it was abandoned in later years. Alma practiced dentistry with a Dr. Arnold. Alma is on the right. In the process of time, Isaac, Leah, Eudora, Lavinia, left to right standing, and then in the front there, Margaret Moon, Alice Amelia, Alma Bailey with Rachel Grant on his lap, Carlos Leroy and Bailey. The insets are Ruth Olive on the left and William Chauncey on the right. Alma loved having fun and would put whirligigs and swings and so forth in the yard and spend $100 or $150 on firecrackers and fireworks for the 4th of July. Lavinia had an understanding heart and the ability to, and the willingness to put herself in other persons' places. Here with her sisters-in-law, she enjoyed answering and asking questions and solving problems with her children. Alma's professional career was long and distinguished. For several decades until he retired, the reputation of his Salt Lake office was second to none in the West, and thousands of people could bear witness to the honest and intelligent workmanship that characterized Dr. Dunford's professional services. Alma died in February of 1919 at the age of 68, shortly after his son Chauncey returned from World War I. Lavinia carried on but was tried by the death of 5 of her children. She encouraged her children to take part in school and church activities and would help them stage plays and fairy tales in the long front hall of their home, playing dress-up and playing silly pictures. The sillier, the better. She passed away at age 83 in October of 1938. Moroni, the 6th child of Isaac and Leah Bailey Dunford, was born in June of 1855. They had emigrated from Trowbridge, Wiltshire, in England just 2 years before, and so he was a youngster when they arrived in St. Louis. Here he is with the Folsom Carpenters in 1884. After being ordained to 70, Moroni was called on a mission to the southern states in 1887. He is on the right here with his missionary companions. The balance of the pictures we'll let speak for themselves since I'm having difficulty with this machine, and we'll let family or the narrator or others add information on Moroni and subsequent brothers and sisters. I'll leave about 10 seconds per shot. The background on most of these shots can be read in the green Book of Remembrance of Isaac and Leah Bailey Dunford and their children. Some of Moroni's letters back home.
These next slides are of Albert Bailey. This picture was taken in 1883. The two earlier shots were, of course, of Eliza. This is of partly Edwin, taken in 1883, and subsequent shots. This photo begins the section on Oliver Cowdery Dunford, This photo was taken with his brother James in the left and another friend on the right in 1888. This photo should have been taken, or actually placed before the other one, because it was taken in 1883 with his brothers. It's a shame how this photo has been damaged. Perhaps it can be digitally reconstructed by someone. This photo is of Oliver seated on the right with his wife, Ida, in the middle when they were called on their mission to New Zealand. This photo begins those of James Lehigh. This was taken in 1883. And of course these photos are of Leah Matilda Dunford Cogue. may say for me to go home. It has unfit me for my mission. Can't do justice to myself nor the cause. I have not had a letter from wifey since, but I wrote to her and doubt and don't let on that I received the cruel letter. The brethren here know about it. I have told them. They say they wonder how I stand it as well as I do. There never was a man came on a mission with a greater desire to fill an honorable mission than I did, and the brethren in this country know it, and the Lord has blessed me wonderfully since I have been here. Now, dear parents, if I should go home, you shall be something and visit our folks for a while. If I can't get the answer, it looks like, dear parents, it says, please don't lisp what I have wrote to anyone till you hear further from me, not even to my brothers. Dear parents, don't grieve over this. I am feeling well considering and am striving to do the best I can. Of course it may turn out all right. I hope and pray so continually. Don't worry. I feel bad about it and going to do what is right by the aid and assistance of the Spirit of our Heavenly Father. God knows I desire to do what is right. I don't wish to be separated from my dear wife and darling babies, and I hope, trust, pray I never shall be, but I pray for all things to be overruled for the best. Pa, you may read my letter to whoever you choose, down to those 2 marks across, but from there don't read to anyone but Ma, and don't you nor Ma feel bad or fret about your son in these lands, as I feel well considering, and am going to do what is right, God being my helper. Dear parents, I ask you to pray that wifey and I may not be separated. If the worst comes to the worst, I will try and make the best of it. The weather here is very disagreeable and unhealthy. Please give my regards to my friends, hoping and praying you are all well and happy, and 6 suits of leave to you. I say goodbye for the present, and God bless you all, from your affectionate son, Alma. This is information on Mary Blair from the Stevenson's